Getting bad news or criticism is never fun, but it can be useful if we grow from it. The problem is we get in the way. I'm going to share 4 habits that'll help you grow from those mistakes. Before I get into these 4 habits, one of the things that I think is important to kind of understand, putting those 4 habits in some context, is the fact that we are biased. Everybody is biased. What I'm referring to as biases are what's called cognitive biases. We are biased. Everybody is. It's just built into and hardwired into our brain and into our development. So it's not something that you could look at and say, God, that's horrible that I'm biased. It's like, yeah, everybody is. I am too. We all are. It's really an issue about recognizing those biases that allow us to grow. So one of them that I think is relevant to this topic of kind of growing from your mistakes is what's referred to as the ostrich effect. You can probably tell by just the name of it what it probably entails, and it is about sticking your head in the sand. So one of the cognitive biases that we have, this ostrich effect, is that we tend to put our head in the sand and not receive that bad news or that critique or that criticism, that critical feedback that is important for us to grow. That ostrich effect also impacts us when it comes to, classroom and our academics and learning. It's like if I don't get the feedback if I don't read the feedback, like I hand in a paper and I didn't get maybe the best grade I could have gotten and I wanted to get. If I don't read the feedback, then maybe I didn't do as badly, or at least I'm hiding from how badly I might have done. The problem is that you're not getting the feedback and being able to turn, again, that mistake or that bad news into something positive. You look and see what somebody else is doing and they make a mistake. The tendency is to blame that person. Like, if it's in a classroom and someone doesn't do well on the test, or someone doesn't do well in the presentation or something, or even the professor makes a mistake or, messes up in their presentation in a lecture, or, messes up on a due date for an assignment, says one thing in the syllabus and another thing, on your learning management system. So you see that they made a mistake, and if they made a mistake, it's their fault. It's all on them. They made the mistake. They weren't prepared. They weren't paying attention. The professor, whatever, wasn't paying attention, is an idiot, whatever the case may be, but it's their fault. Now, that exact same thing happens to yourself. The tendency in this actor-observer bias is that it's not me, it's somebody else. Like if I didn't do well on a presentation, it's because the instructions weren't clear. The professor didn't explain it very well. It's always somebody else. It's not, I'm the mistake. I made the mistake. I didn't prepare well. I didn't do what I should have done. I didn't pay attention. And so that actor-observer bias is also another cognitive bias where the other person is at fault when they make a mistake. And when I make a mistake, it actually is also still their fault. So instead of saying, again, like with the ostrich effect, I made a mistake. How can I grow from it? So I wanted to share then these 4 different habits that I think are important to help you kind of allow those mistakes to turn into growth. So the first one of these is simply to get off your back. Give yourself a break. Everybody makes mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. Be compassionate towards yourself. Give yourself a little bit of break to mess up once in a while. And it's okay. In many ways, it's also something that you should pursue and create those opportunities for growth. But we don't allow ourselves to grow sometimes because it's just like, I'm an idiot. How could I make that mistake? That was that answer on that question. I should have known that. I did know that. I studied it last night or last week. Why didn't I know that? I'm such an idiot. Don't say that about yourself. It's okay that you make a mistake. It's okay that you're still learning. That's what you're in college to do, is to learn. And you should be doing it, when you're my age too, is to continue to learn. There was a situation with a student of mine My university has a lot of students where English is a second language. A lot of them grew up speaking Spanish. And I had this one student who I could tell was, from other assignments, was, a very capable student, knew what she wrote about in the different quizzes and assignments she had to hand in that were written. But when it came to discussing in class, she was, hesitant. And part of that was because English was her second language. And you layer that on top of just maybe not being confident about speaking, even if it was in Spanish, or speaking about this topic because, maybe the topic is just unclear. But you layer on that other element of it being the English being a second language made it even more challenging for her. And I remember this one time when she spoke up in class and it didn't come out as well as I know it was in her head. It didn't come out, again, because of the language issue. And I could tell, after that comment kept going on in class and having the rest of the discussion, and the class was done, I could see just in her body language and her eyes that she was like upset with herself. So, I kind of followed her out of the classroom and caught up to her and just said, let's chat for a little bit. We spoke for a few minutes after class. And I said, what you said was fine. What you said was good. And the fact that you were challenged by, English being your second language, the fact that you had that challenge and it still came out the way it did, maybe not perfect in your mind, but still came out well, is great. So I said, give yourself a break. You have a challenge that 95% of the other class doesn't have. So give yourself a break. It's okay that you made a mistake. She continued to get better because she got more confident speaking in English in the classroom and under that environment that she, over the course of the semester, did get better and better. A second habit is to take a long view of your time in a particular class or just at college. So many students get so wrapped up around their grades. Oftentimes, a student who focuses about their grades and comes and asks me about their grades the most are the ones who have no problem getting good grades. But so many students really focus on that. And it even comes down to, again, the individual mistakes. You get so wrapped up in that failure, that little micro failure, as I've called them, where, if you take this long view and say, really what I want to do is grow. That's all I care about. Whether or not I mess up on a particular test really has no bearing on your overall success in your life and in your career. I don't even say it has very little. It has no impact on the success of yourself in the future, in your career, whatever profession you may pursue. It can be if you don't allow yourself to grow from it. But if you take this long view and say it's just a test, it's just a comment, it's just one presentation, it's not that big of a deal, and focus on, okay, what can I learn from this instead? Instead of worrying about it, say, what I really want to do is I want to take that failure, that mistake, that micro failure, and actually grow from it in some fashion or another. And then you are using that micro failure to actually create growth for you that will have an impact if you take that approach and take a little bit of risk. And if you do take that risk and try something new, that's even making it even better and better for you in the long term to get into that habit. The third habit is somewhat similar to the first one, and that is to practice mindfulness. So it's a little bit about getting off your back a bit, but it's also just about pulling yourself away from the moment. And whether or not hopefully you don't, but whether or not you take a lot of that self-criticism internally or not, hopefully you don't, but just by stepping back and putting it into some perspective and just giving you a chance to kind of just breathe, just to relax a little bit. I think it's really valuable to go exercise. And it doesn't mean you need to go to your rec center and work out or anything. But, even if it's just like put on a pair of tennis shoes, sneakers, whatever, and walk around your campus and, go on a bicycle ride, get off campus. So many students, their world, when they go into another city, their 95% of their time is within the four roads of your campus. Like, get off campus, go someplace else, go up here in Tucson, go up in the mountains, go out in the desert and go for a walk, go for a bicycle ride. But just take a deep breath and just kind of relax. And I think that process of practicing mindfulness, and there's a lot of different ways of doing that, is just useful to kind of settle down, the static that we have on our internal radio, and just being able to just relax a little bit. This allows us to kind of take in those moments that I kind of messed up and like, okay, it's not that big of a deal. In the grand scheme of things, it's certainly not that big of a deal. Practice mindfulness, and there's certainly a lot of resources to help you understand that concept even more. The fourth habit is to celebrate your failures. Now, I know that seems like an odd thing to say, and I'm not saying be happy that you failed a test or hopefully not, but failed a class. See the positive side of those failures. And again, positive side, particularly of those little micro failures. If you say like, I'm going to celebrate those because it gives me a chance to like follow up and maybe read that couple paragraphs out of the text or out of my notes, or send a note to my professor and ask, can you explain this? Those are opportunities where you're actually learning more. I mean, you could have in that multiple choice exam just by happenstance got the question right. 1 out of 4 options, and I'm not really sure. I think it's this one, but I'm not really sure. You answered and I got it right. And you may not even know why you got it right. If you actually got it wrong, and that forced you to go back and kind of like read those 2 paragraphs in the text, or after class ask the professor, can you explain that to me? That actual failure probably made you learn more than getting the question right. If you focus on these 4 habits, you're going to be able to turn your mistakes and failures into your success.